The discovery of a cache of axe heads on the Tonglu Mountain in 1973 shook the world's archaeological community to its core. Evidence was about to emerge that far earlier than anyone thought possible, copper was being mined on this mountainside on a truly industrial scale. Long-cherished ideas about China's Bronze Age were about to change forever. NASA launched the Skylab, carried by the Saturn V, from the Kennedy Space Center. On June 28th, China successfully conducted its first hydrogen bomb test. The discovery of an ancient copper mine on the Tonglu Mountain the same year was no less significant. Of all the non-ferrous metals, copper is the most versatile, capable of satisfying a great variety of human needs and wants. Alongside the invention of writing and the emergence of the state, the mastery for metals for tool-making is regarded as a critical milestone on the road to civilization. But how did early people obtain this vital metal? Where did they mine the ore necessary to its production? And how did they smelt usable metal from it? There had always been scant evidence that these activities took place in prehistoric China on a large scale. The discovery of the mine on the Tonglu Mountain changed everything. How did the early Chinese delve so deep beneath the earth without modern equipment and technology? This was one of the key questions that confronted the archaeological team organized by the then National History Museum and Hubei Provincial Museum. But to begin with, they were at a loss. How would they unravel this ancient riddle?
我是50年代就搞考古，什么样的东西都碰上过，墓葬、遗址、窑、瓷窑什么都碰上过，就没碰上过这个采矿的这些遗址。
But help was close at hand. Who better to turn to for insight into the work of ancient miners than mining engineers? The mining engineers agreed that the workings uncovered by the archaeologists looked like a network of mines. But the crucial question was, when exactly were they created? It wasn't long before some intriguing clues emerged in the form of fragments of pottery. Could they be the remains of utensils used by the ancient miners? If so, analysis of their patterns and shapes could reveal when the mine was in operation.
一个陶片，我们捡到陶片了。另外还有我们用碳十四测年，用它那个木头里头的最细小的那一部分。 年代这个比较准确的，我们可以测出年代。
桐麓山古铜矿的年代距今2000至3000年间，即始于西周，经春秋战国，一直延到西汉时期，持续1000余年之久。
As the evidence accumulated, a clearer picture emerged. An ancient copper mine dating from the Shang and Zhou dynasties was buried deep beneath the Tonglu Mountain.
那是典型的国家工程，采矿是最容易形成这个大规模的社会管理组织的。
那个时候的青铜器就相当于现在的计算机一样的，或者是互联网，是绝对的高科技产业。它需要的组织，然后资源。 需要可调配的人，所以说我们其实如果了解那个时代，就那个时代最重要的技术一定是不能错过的。
But new, puzzling questions kept mounting up. When ancient logs were discovered stacked on a cliff, the archaeologists were at a loss to explain it. The cat's cradle of tunnels and logs they'd stumbled into was truly mind-boggling.
我们先去现场求教去，我就把他们把考古队就带到这个地下采矿去了，也请过矿里边的好几个工程师。我们有考古知识，他们呢有生产知识，就是一起在那里分析。
In 1973, 12 ore bodies were found in the Tonglu Mountain. Surprisingly, all these ore bodies were already being exploited more than 2,000 years ago.
古代的人都开采过，而且是凡是有富矿的地方，大家都开采得很干净。
How did they do it? How was it possible for ancient people lacking today's scientific know-how and technology to locate these ore bodies so accurately? Were any clues to be found on the mountain that revealed how the ancient people discovered the ore bodies? The archaeological team decided to make a careful survey of all 12.
山上没有树，草了也没什么别的野草，就是有一种草长得很茂盛。开花了以后就像草鞋似，我们就叫它像草鞋花似的，我们就叫他们叫桐草嘛，我们就是桐草。后来我们就真的跑了一下，所有编的作为矿体的这个山上都有这个桐草。后来我们就想了一下，可能古人就是靠这个桐草给他们提供了信息。
But was it really this plant that guided people to the valuable minerals they mined here all those years ago? We can never know for sure. How long these seemingly magical plants have been growing here is a mystery. However, what we can say is that the ancients did know that plants often revealed the presence of valuable minerals. We know this because of a 6th century book, the Illustrated Mirror of the Earth. Though it was lost long ago and the writer remains unknown, reference is made to it in other ancient works that do survive, giving us a good idea of its contents. The text listed ways in which minerals below ground can be located using above-ground indicators. Many of these telltale signs are to be seen in plants. If the grass stems are tainted yellow, there is copper underground. If red, lead. Reads one extract from the book, showing that ancient people had noticed a link between plants and the mineral composition of the land in which they grew. So, for that reason, it doesn't seem unreasonable to speculate that 2,000 years ago, it might have been copperweed that led people to ore-abundant Tonglu Mountain. It's tempting to imagine the scene. People on a mountainside covered in wild flowers and grasses. Then discover copperweed in full bloom. They rush back to the village with the news of their exciting discovery. The elders grasp the full significance of the find. Where that flower grows, copper is bound to be. The divination rituals take place. Exploration and mining begins shortly after. On June 2nd, 1980, a symposium on ancient Chinese bronzes was held in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Sha Nai, one of the founders of modern Chinese archaeology, officially announced the results of the excavation of the copper mine site in the Tonglu Mountain. The discovery, excavation, and research of this site provided the first reliable explanation for the source of copper in China in the Bronze Age. In the copper mine site, evidence of ancient ingenuity abounds. It's mind-boggling enough to speculate how these ancient people, lacking reinforced concrete and machinery, were able to burrow into these intricate layers of ore. But getting the ores back up to the surface must have required a combination of superhuman strength and ingenuity. How did they do it? Of course, we can never know for sure how they did it, but there are places we can look for clues. What can modern mining and industry tell us about the mining and smelting methods used by the ancients? Wuxia County is located in the westernmost area of Xinjiang. Semuhana village within the county is the place that has the latest sunset in China. Up in the mountains here, the bitter northwest winter never seems to end, the peaks capped with snow all year round. But 40 kilometers further on, at the Sa-Re-Ke copper mine, conditions are even tougher. Most of the prospecting work at the Sa-Re-Ke copper mine has now been completed. Now the hard work of mining the ores has begun. But 2 kilometers away in the snowy mountains, prospecting work is still in progress. This is a modern exploratory well. Workers drill into the ground and pump up the rock cores 500 meters below the ground through a hollow steel pipe. More than 3,000 kilometers away in the Nuaru mine in Tibet, people are also exploring underground copper deposits. The exploratory wells stand out against the sky of the plateau. Workers are cracking open the newly extracted rock cores. The location, depth and distribution of the rock cores are marked, and then they will be crushed and tested. By analysing the rock core samples, geologists can determine the features and reserves of the ore bodies. When exploring large ore veins, sometimes hundreds of probing machines will operate at the same time. They work like a large graphic plotter, creating a full image of the unseen underground ore bodies. Without this vital exploratory work, mining would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. But aren't these modern techniques only made possible by the latest science and technology? Not quite as modern as you might think. Research on the Tonglu Mountain site reveals that ancient miners prospected in almost exactly the same way. More than 2,000 years ago, when workers discovered copper deposits but couldn't determine the exact location of the veins, they would dig shafts down from the surface. If they reached a certain depth and found no copper, they'd give up and abandon the shaft. But if they did find copper, they'd start digging horizontally through the ore vein, drift mining. Once that vein was exhausted, they'd dig another vertical shaft, a blind shaft, to find a lower vein. The original altitude of the Tonglu Mountain mine site had been 95 meters, but due to years of open mining, the altitude of the open pit was only 50 meters when the archaeological team found it. It meant that 2,000 years ago, the mines reached at least 40 meters underground. Delving to such depths through multiple shafts, how did these ancient people stop the mine from collapsing? Nowadays, mine tunnels and shafts are reinforced with cement to stop sand and rock from pouring in, and supporting rebars are used to fix the rocks. Thanks to these techniques, it's now possible to mine hundreds of meters beneath the ground. But the ancients didn't have access to modern technology. How did they keep their tunnels from collapsing? Once again, it's a question we can never answer for certain. With the upper layers of the ancient mine destroyed by the modern mine workings, much valuable physical evidence had long disappeared. Nevertheless, there were a few clues.
就把那个一边的这个围岩给它扒掉，三边还保存了这个样子，然后从里面看出来它当时这个木头是怎么样进行支护的。
Hardwood, perhaps of the very same sort whose discovery had originally alerted the archaeological authorities, was used to reinforce the shafts and tunnels. What's more, this hardwood was not deployed in a haphazard way, but formed an intricately designed supporting infrastructure of interlocking pieces. Meanwhile, the upper parts of the shafts were supported by stacked square wooden frames. The drifts were supported by an ingenious structure composed of two Y-shaped pillars, a top beam, a bottom beam, and an internal beam. While the top beam was supported by Y-shaped pillars that were embedded in the two ends of the bottom beam, an internal beam was installed beneath the top beam to prevent the two pillars from collapsing. In this way, pressure from the top, side and bottom was balanced. Structures like these were deployed at regular intervals as tunnelling progressed. Roofs made of sticks and planks laid over the top beams provided an extra element of safety, with wooden planks placed between the pillars protecting the walls. In fact, the painstaking work of the archaeologists revealed that the huge mining projects of the ancient world essentially depended on the same principles adopted in present-day mining. The only big difference lies in the materials used. For ancient miners tunnelling dozens of meters below the earth, or modern-day ones a kilometre below the surface, the most important thing is that rock above their heads remains above their heads. But the problem isn't quite as simple as that. As seams are mined and the ores removed, the tunnels get wider. As they get wider, the walls have to support more weight. The danger of collapse increases. How did the ancients address this problem? Just like their modern counterparts, these ancient miners adopted two methods to keep the shafts and tunnels from collapsing: adding supporting pillars and backfilling abandoned and exhausted veins. Excavations show that waste rock, often comprised of lean ores not worth transporting to the surface, were used to bolster the stability of the tunnels and shafts. This technique also saved them the bother of shifting poor quality ore to the surface. While modern backfilling techniques are more advanced, they remain essentially the same. Nowadays, instead of stuffing worked seams with loose rubble, waste rock and sand is mixed with cement and pumped into the worked sections. It's just one of the many parallels between ancient and modern mining technology. Take this hollow wooden pipe, for example. It is, to all intents and purposes, the forerunner of today's water channels. In order to prevent leakage and seepage, plaster was daubed on the joints of these ancient pipes. The water that flowed into the wells through these pipes was lifted out by means of a wooden bucket. The only difference nowadays is the laborious task is now powered by machine, not human muscle.